It's Eddie Quist.
So which werewolf transformation was better? Was it David Kessler in American Werewolf in London? Or was it Eddie Quist in The Howling? Hey folks, Darren here. Welcome back to Only Sands. Here are 5 great reasons why you should rewatch The Howling. Reason 1, it's a darker and more adult werewolf experience. We will come back to that debate that I mentioned at the start, but The Howling was released on April the 10th of 1981 and is now just over 45 years old. It shared that incredible year with An American Werewolf in London and Wolfen, although Wolfen is often called a werewolf film when it's really quite something different. For anyone who has not seen The Howling for a while, Dee Wallace plays reporter Karen White, who helps the police trap a suspected serial killer called Eddie Quist. But when the sting ends up in Eddie's death, she's left traumatized and she travels with her husband to a retreat called the Colony, only to discover that Eddie was part of something much bigger. That's about as much plot as we need at this point, but for much of its opening, The Howling barely feels like a werewolf film at all. My first experience of The Howling came from Terror in the Isles on VHS in around about 1985, and that documentary was my horror bible, introducing me to movies like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, The Howling, and dozens of other films I would eventually track down. And I suspect some of you had the same experience as well. I'd already seen Joe Dante's Piranha at this point, so Kevin McCarthy, Belinda Bolaski and Dick Miller all felt familiar, while John Sayles and Pino Donaggio also returned. Piranha's kind of, cheeky fun, whereas The Howling feels like its older and much seedier relative. And you feel that difference within the first 10 minutes. Eddie leads Karen into an adult store, into a kind of booth, and plays this deeply disturbing film, which is quite horrific to watch even today. Immediately it gives The Howling a really grimy and sexually charged atmosphere, and it feels a long way from the usual sort of full moon and silver bullet routine that we get in these films. And this was a genuine adult shop filled with real peripherals, I guess, and bondage material. And Dee Wallace admitted that she could not wait to get out of there. Joe Dante filmed the material playing inside the booth in his own garage, describing the experience as really embarrassing and awkward to film. But when Karen turns towards Eddie, we see him only in silhouette against this projection light. His voice starts to change, and before we can see what's happening, the police burst through the door and shoot him. And Dante hints at a transformation. You can kind of hear it in Eddie Quist's voice, but he refuses to show us any of the creature at this point, allowing Pino Donaggio's score and Robert Picardo's voice and I guess Dee Wallace's fear to do all the work instead. And Dante wanted this opening to play like a modern film noir and not announce itself as a werewolf movie straight away. And that's what makes The Howling feel so adult, I think. Before it becomes a monster film, it is a nasty little thriller about a reporter being pulled into a really dark and unpleasant world.
I'm going to recommend that you go out to the Colony for a week or two.
Reason 2, it turns a sanctuary into a trap. And after all that kind of filth and claustrophobia of the opening act, the Colony feels like a breath of fresh air. People are socializing, there's a party on the beach, and for a while it looks as though Dr. Wagner has sent Karen to the right place. Even his promise that the Colony can help people get back to what they really are sounds warm and kind of reassuring. But once we know who these people really are, of course that line becomes one of the darkest jokes in the film. His name is another Joe Dante in-joke. Dr. George Wagner was named after George Wagner, who directed The Wolfman in 19 41, I think it was. So the film gives us another clue without ever making a fuss about it. Dante doesn't make the colony look sort of obviously evil. It's not a crumbling castle or somewhere where no sensible person would enter. It looks pleasant and reasonable. So we all kind of lower our guard along with Karen at this point. The werewolf community within this film was one of John Sayles' major additions to the screenplay. It stops the Howling becoming another story about one man changing under a full moon, and the threat is organized and lives alongside us and has somehow built its own support group, I guess. There's also a morgue scene that always reminds me of Halloween, and you may know what I mean here. The scene in Halloween where the cemetery keeper tells the story of Charlie Bowles before Loomis discovers that Judith Meyer's headstone has disappeared is kind of mirrored here, where the attendant in the morgue played by John Sayles tells a story before Eddie Quist's body is found to be missing. Intentional or not, I have no idea, but the rhythm of these two scenes is really quite similar. The colony works because it's secret, sort of hiding in plain sight. It doesn't suddenly become this trap at all. It becomes apparent that it always was one. And before we move on, if you're new here, my name is Darren and this is Only Sounds, where we revisit horror films many of us first discovered on VHS and ask whether they still deserve a place on our shelves today. And if that sounds like your sort of thing, please consider subscribing. Okay. Reason 3, it gives us one of cinema's greatest werewolf reveals. And The Howling understands that the longer you hold a creature back, the more impact it can have when you finally show it. We're given silhouettes, sounds, like quick glimpses, and even a severed arm starting to change back. But Dante makes us wait for the complete werewolf. Then we reach that filing cabinet, and guys, you know the moment here. Terry is searching for Eddie Quist records and starts to pull out this file, only for a huge clawed hand to reach through and take hold of it from the other side. And it's such a simple idea, but I think it might be just my favorite moment in the entire film. It almost feels as though Eddie's confirming who he is before revealing himself. And then when the creature steps forward, we finally take in its height and its shape and the incredible wolfish face that it has. Dante then shows us its strength as it lifts Terry completely off the floor as though she absolutely weighs nothing. And this is not just a nice clear shot of Rob Bottin's work here. Within a few seconds we understand what the creature looks like, how powerful it is, and why nobody trapped at the colony has really got no chance against it whatsoever. The original suit was really limited, and an early test looked more like a bear than a wolf, according to Joe Dante. And while Bottin initially had little more than a head and a hands to play with, and after watching the footage, Dante persuaded Avco Embassy to provide more money so the creature could be improved and properly shown on screen. And the extra material was filmed after the main shoot, and Dante admits the picture would have not worked without it. The design later influenced movies like Dog Soldiers, and very few movie werewolves have looked this, I guess, imposing on screen. Reason 4, Rob Bottin's effects still look extraordinary today, and Rob Bottin was only 21 when he took charge of the effects on this film. Rick Baker had started early work before An American Werewolf in London finally secured financing, and Baker moved to that film. He remained a consultant on The Howling and recommended his young protege Rob Bottin. Bottin worked on Piranha around the age of 18, and 1 year after The Howling he would create those astonishing effects for The Thing. And looking at those films together, the speed of his development is just ridiculous. But not everything in The Howling works equally well. The fireside transformation between Bill and Marsha moves forward through a series of cuts before ending with this kind of cell animation, which Dante himself admitted was not perfect. But for me, it takes the edge off of what should be a an amazing moment in the film, but thankfully the film is still saving its best transformation for later on. Eddie Quist's transformation is where Bottin really throws everything at the screen, and Robert Picardo remembers spending around 4.5 hours having all that kind of facial makeup applied, and another 4.5 hours on everything sort of below his neck. Inflatable bladders, sometimes made from condoms, were hidden beneath the makeup before Picardo was gradually replaced by a series of mechanical heads during the sequence. And some of the jerking that you see on screen happened because the mechanisms just didn't move smoothly enough, but they added some cracking and popping noises afterwards just to kind of make it feel more painful. Dante called it probably the most detailed on-screen transformation attempted to that point, which would have been in the April of 1981, and of course American Werewolf came out in later on in the year, I think in the August. And I just wish that I'd have seen this film in the cinema. I was only 8 when this film came out, but to have seen this transformation on the big screen along with American Werewolf in London as well must have been fantastic. And this is where the debate really begins, because Bottin concentrates heavily on Eddie's face as the sort of skin swells and the teeth grow and the snout pushes outwards, with much of the body sort of tightly framed or hidden in shadow, whereas Rick Baker and John Landis transform David Kessler's entire body in a brightly lit room where there's really nowhere for the effects to hide. Both scenes are fantastic in their own right, and I know many of you are already preparing to tell me which one wins. I will give you my answer shortly, but Rick Baker's Academy Award gave the American Werewolf supporters all the ammunition that they need, I think. Reason 5, Karen's live television sacrifice is a brilliantly bleak ending. And if the opening shows us how adult the Howling is, the ending shows us how cynical it can be as well. Karen has been bitten, but instead of waiting for the inevitable, she uses her position as a television reporter to warn everyone that a secret society of werewolves is living amongst them. She transforms live on air, giving the public what should be undeniable proof and knowing that Chris will have to shoot her before she hurts anybody. And Karen takes control of what has happened to her and turns it into a sacrifice. The original ending didn't actually show her complete transformation, but preview audiences really wanted to see it. The creature she transforms into was called the Bambi werewolf because Karen had fought against that animal side. She may have been bitten, but she never actually becomes one of them. The mechanical head for Karen was filmed in the editing room on the night before the movie was mixed, which is an extraordinary sort of last-minute creation for one of the film's more memorable images. Karen gives her life to expose the truth, yet the people watching at home assume they have just seen another television effect. And after everything she's been through, she becomes another piece of entertainment. And Dante finishes the joke by cutting to someone ordering a hamburger rare, where it's revealed that Quist's sister is still alive and out there. It is sad and cynical and keeping within the movie that we entered into 90 minutes before. Karen proves that werewolves exist, but the television audience is so used to being sold nonsense that even the truth is no longer enough to convince them. So to conclude, and going back to the question I asked at the beginning, which has the better transformation, the Howling or An American Werewolf in London? And for me, the answer will always be An American Werewolf in London. Rick Baker transforms David Kessler's whole body in bright light, making it feel physical, painful, and completely exposed. And I also have a deeper connection with that film as well, so the Howling was probably never going to win for me on this point. But that doesn't make Rob Bottin's work any less remarkable at all, or The Howling a lesser film. It gives us something darker, something seedier, and more predatory. And after 45 years, it still feels different from almost every other werewolf movie. And as you know, guys, I ran a poll this week to see what you guys thought about who had the better transformation scene? Was it Eddie Quist in The Howling, or was it David Kessler in American Werewolf in London? And the results came out an overwhelming 80% in favor of David Kessler's transformation. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Rob Bottin's work in The Howling. It is still a stunning sequence, and there was a lot of support for it in the comments. And I've collected a few. Given this is an episode about The Howling, I've collected some of the Howling quotes for you to hear. Caramel Princess 1990 says, "Justice for Eddie. I found his transformation scene scarier and much prefer the standing werewolf." Gunlover 714 says, "Howling is the better movie. Kessler is the better transformation." So even though he likes The Howling more, he prefers David Kessler's transformation. Kingslayer says, "Prefer the Howling transformation because it's a giant, intimidating wolf with big long ears and a snout with sharp teeth, and it walks on two legs. That is just more impressive looking, in my opinion." Thanks for your comment there, Kingslayer. Jamie Holmes says, "How about a shout out for some of the incredible practical werewolf effects in Neil Jordan's Company of Wolves?" Well, I do like that film, but maybe that's something we'll cover further down the line, and some of the effects are indeed great in that movie as well. Jamie TH3F says, "Both are excellent transformations, but I'm going with The Howling. Even though the transformation scene is long, it has the scariest werewolf results and the juiciest mouth sequence in either film." Okay, fair enough. And Daniel Bick 3911 says, "Both superb. For me, it's The Howling." And finally, Solid Tom 77 says, "I think Bottin's werewolves were way scarier than Baker's. For me, The Howling remains peak, unsurpassed werewolf cinema. All in all, American Werewolf in London is the superior movie, but I still remember the nightmares I had from viewing The Howling as a child." These are only 5 reasons to rewatch it. There are many more, from Pino Donaggio's great score and John Horror's cinematography to the references that are throughout the film about werewolves and brilliant casts, but I'll leave all those to you. So now it's your turn. Which transformation do you prefer, and how did you discover The Howling? If Terror in the Isles introduced you to it as well, let me know. And if you'd like me to do 5 great reasons to watch Terror in the Isles, then let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, folks, my name's Darren, this is Only Sands, and I'll see you in the next episode.